Okay, a little earlier I was practicing some of the tricky sections in the last movement of the Schumann Quintet, and boy, they don't serve me well yet. One thing I do recognize when I'm in a rehearsal, of course, is that the context changes so dramatically. A lot of these figures, melodic figures in the left hand, in the last movement, which I had noted are doubled with either a viola or a cello, things like that. They're much less significant because of the doubling, or actually said another way, it's really important that I make sure that my right hand is feather light and that my left hand is melodic but not intrusive, and that the busyness of what I do can't in any way be apparent. It can't be busy. It has to feel like the most natural thing. I'm not there yet, and perhaps of all of the fast runny things that I've worked in the other movements, they're more overt in their demand. I'm starting to reach the point where I feel a sense of comfort and ease and clarity. This is still too complicated for me, so I have to go back and make sure I can integrate it fully. It's one of my, shall we say, one of my prime remaining challenges in this concert. So here goes. I'm skipping, rather than always starting from the same place. I'm going to start the second version of this theme, where I start with the cello instead of with the viola, and that's shortly after I or 9 in the score. So. Wow. Okay, I have a line to shift my hand down. Alas, I did not put in a fingering, which should have been 1. I'm on 5th finger here. Now, if I want to shift, I put 3rd for my bottom note. I definitely should have notated the thumb to get me to the 3rd. 5, now start again. Okay, easy enough. Ooh. A slightly complicated thing at the end. I'm going 3, 2, 4. At least that's what I decided. The continuation, by comparison with the first part, is so much easier. So. It's worth noting that just from a physical perspective, only the beginning really is any particular kind of challenge. I call it modeling, that I want to be able to experience some of my end result before I can play it in the fashion in which it's written. So, it's easy enough for me to experience that bass line on its own, at tempo with a sense of shape. Now, because I have that in my head and in my body, I try to match that model. Now, there's something to be said for not being fancy fingering here and having a transition fingering, but rather starting again. There is a slur ending. Cello part as well. There's that. So I might consider that because, well, I am considering it, you can see. I would change my initial fingering. It certainly would aid my head right now. Yeah, you notice if I start from the second phrase, it's quite easy. arbitrary in my finger. They just fall into place. A lot of those sophisticated choices don't tend to matter under fire if the basic gesture and understanding of the line is there. So, too much wiggle. That's pretty easy. Okay. Happens when the figuration changes. That's a way of remembering it. The interesting thing is I really don't have to fight hard for this melodic line. It's already present in the other voice, in the cello in this case. So I already know that the letting go makes it a whole lot easier. So let me imagine for a second it's just figuration, it has no melodic contour. I've got to examine the possibility that I'm dead wrong about my fingering. Or at least differently enabled. Admittedly, I have chosen to go to 5-3 here, and wiggle around here at the end of my hand. Would be 2-4, 2-5, and I discussed that before. Maybe I'm avoiding it because I didn't do it the previous time. I'm giving my eraser a real workout here. 2-4. And 2-3. The fact that I'm able to play it faster and lighter quickly, by quickly I mean I pick up on it, is an indication that my body prefers this solution, at least now. Oh, nice. Oh, stay. Move. Oh, stay. Let's see if the starting finger then needs to be changed for the second. Certainly starting on 2 gives me greater simplicity in moving down the scale. There, so, whoops. So, 2. Well, consider changing the top finger. So, okay. It's amazing how distracting that right hand is, because my left hand is starting to get it. This fingering, it's unlike the first time too, when the repeat has slightly different chords. This one starts off with the same chord, so the solution should be the same. And then of course it goes to somewhere different altogether. So that's also what I just used before. So rather than make a new determination, I'm just going to erase and see what my body ends up doing. Well, it did 2-3, and it was reasonably happy with it. Tell you something that I just did that sometimes amuses me when I do it. I've been concentrating on the fact that the right hand is a less significant accompanimental figure, but also that sometimes it plays a trill and sometimes it goes up. That time I looked at the right hand, and somehow the lack of distraction or extra involvement in the left hand made my left hand more comfortable. You'll notice I'm playing it right now while looking at the camera, or you. So that's an indication that something about the score, the way Schumann has written it, or the way I interact with what Schumann has written, makes me feel a sense of complexity, whereas doing it by feel, I'm much happier with it. So go figure. Now, in this case, in this last one, there's no trill one. There's no simple one. It's all with the octaves. And then what does it do? And it skips. That's unusual. It usually just goes up by a step. In this case, it goes down by a third. The same method. In other words, I think maybe the visual distraction really is much more significant than I'd given it credit. If that's true, getting rid of the visual distraction becomes a useful thing. Even this change of finger, even though it's slightly odd, either way I do it, by being more aware physically of what I'm doing and less concerned about how it looks on the score, I gain an advantage. horrible? Is it awkward? Is it tension-provoking? It isn't really. It's just it's odd and it's not ideal. It's not optimized. Well, here's an interesting possibility. After I used the word optimization, I went back to the 3, and then went 3, 4, and then 4 again. Why? Because if I had to optimize just this E flat to B, or E flat to C flat, that's the fingering I would use. So if I'm looking for comfort, even though there's a slur, I've already indicated several things. One is that it's not the lead voice. In this case, the viola is playing with me in a higher register. Excuse me, the second violin in a higher register. And also my legato is going to be aided by my foot, and I'm going to gain much more of a shapeliness to the phrase anyway if I'm at ease. So I found what may end up being sort of a hybrid solution. In other words, instead of going 2, 2, 3, 4, that would be good. But getting to it is a little hard. So if I go to 3, 4, which is better balanced for my hand because the third finger is then on a black note, and then just nudge my arm into the next black note, so the E flat. Kind of cool. Let me see if there's anything like that in the previous one. Well, there's no doubt, if I were doing it in complete isolation, A flat, B flat to the thumb and E flat is easier to do with 3, 4. So using that as a basis, I'm going to start with that. Okay, at the very least, my left hand done alone without the interference of the right hand is getting happier. Too much of a shock, the change of key and position for my ear or my body or my mind. Wrap themselves around it. Coming. Go back to the preceding section and see if any of these decisions or discoveries or possibilities affect my choices in a different key. So here we are after B or after 2, depending on your score. because the thumb would then have the melody and the shape would be on the weaker finger and the rotation would be much more natural. Now, I don't think I'm likely to do that, but I certainly am curious. It's always worth one try. Unfortunately, this figure is much harder to get the left hand to play, especially in a cross hand position. So I'm going to shrug my shoulders and say, nice try. How to go on. Now the second doesn't really feel good at all, so. For the first four chords is really nice. Actually, first five, 4, 5, and then I have to make a shift. But it's only one shift. I don't like it. What if I use second finger just one time? Three twice in a row. 5, 3, 5. What if? So 5, 3, 5, 2, 5, 3, 5, 3. And then 4 at the end. That's an awful lot of pain to get to what I think. It's not perfect, but it feels physically and mentally, currently, the simplest.